questions because, so not for the whole 30 minutes. So you find a little opening to throw a little, how they say, they throw a little boost for the first 5 minutes. But I will have my research officers do this for me. So I prepare my debate myself. But the data comes from the research officer. I tell the research officer, after two of them, I say, look, if this bill is on scrap metal, which we spoke about, and I think the Attorney General lauded me for some comments that I made, on that day in the bill. Now, what he mentioned, it's things that, I told my research officers, find out what is the world's view on scrap metal. What is happening in the world about the scrap metal industry? Okay.
Yeah.
Two, what is the regional perspective? What's happening in the Caribbean? And then what's happening in Trinidad and Tobago? Go to the newspaper and get all the commentaries from me. Who say it good, who say it bad. Then when we caucus as a party, whenever we do, when we did it, I haven't done it in a while, but I will find out what is the party's view on it. So my job now is, how do I make a presentation that the public wants to hear? And I felt from day one, if you are a listener to the Parliament channel and Parry gets up to speak, but in his 45 minutes, he has established his knowledge of what the world is doing, what the region is doing, what the country is doing, why we can't support everything in the bill. It may have some good parts. We are going to ask the government, because our job is to poke holes in your legislation. And if the holes are wide enough, you have a duty to fix it. If you don't feel it need fixing, well, you go on with your business. But I felt if I took that approach in 45 minutes, I would have given something substantial that makes sense to the listener. And it positions you, hey, that fella, he's not, just surface. Like, he has some metal, he has some grit, he has some research, he understands what he's speaking about. And that is the material of the people we want standing in our parliament. And that is the method. I've spoken on the DNA bill. I mean, I'm not a science man by any stretch of the imagination, but I would research what other territories are doing. What's the impact? So sometime I will go. A bill that is coming. When we were doing the Explain Your Wealth bill, I remember going and I have my research officer. I said, look, I want you go and find out in the UK and the US, similar legislation that was challenged in the Supreme Court. What are the areas that was objected? So when I come, my job is to tell the Attorney General, look, I understand the nature of what you want to do, follow the money, but these are three areas that I want you to address because it can likely be upheld or thrown out in the court. Now, again, that is what I am there to do. What is the impact of the legislation on the man in Rio Claro? The fella who working at the corporation, but he working for $3,000 or $4,000 a month, but he has a farm. But because he planted watermelons and bananas and so on, the man have a nice big concrete house and he have a BMW sit down somewhere downstairs. Now, is that a man getting wealth illegally? No, but if you watch the financial records, the corporation paying him $5,000 a month. But because he has a full-time job, he can go to ADB, get a loan, buy a tractor, get state land, do it the right way and have his farming. So I always say that legislation is about how does it impact the people of Mayaro. So I'm not going to argue law in the parliament. When they reach at the committee stage level, the lawyers will deal with the nitty-gritties. My job is to tell the AG, this is how the farmers in Mayaro, the fishermen in Mayaro, this is how this law will impact them. And I have a concern here. Can you address it in your wind-up? And to me, that makes sense in terms of just talking all over the place. And, you're talking all kind of wide. I also have one or two colleagues, I feel they create panic unnecessarily. Unnecessary panic to the general public. It's good politics. But I mean, why would I go out in the public and tell the general public that the Minister of Finance say every small business from the nuts man and the doubles man, the fine is $10,000, you have to go and register your business. That was never the case. But it was good politics when that matter came out, a couple of months ago, and I had to address it as well. As somebody who's shadowing trade and finance, I made it clear, where the clarity required and who ought to be registered as a trading business versus the Sunday evening lady who come out with she chili baby and snow cone and she put a thing in front of the table and she makes some money to send them to school for the week. So I think I hope I answer your question in terms of how we prepare and how do we deliver.
Okay, what I did see, and then we're going to move on to the minister's part and the SRC thing, because I have strong views about that, and I feel that I do not agree with the increase that was given. So let me just start with that. I'm not talking about for the on the ministers. I don't agree with it, given the circumstances. But what they did say, and this is America, England, and they're talking about when people become ministers, and it was so true. I could have really related to that. So I don't know if you would be able to relate to that. They said that a minister comes in there, and all of a sudden he meets with his staff, and he's supposed to know what the policy is going to be and outline the policy of the government, which, by the way, he's just been told by his prime minister what is his portfolio. So he just found out what his portfolio is, but suddenly, magically, he's transformed into an expert. They say, no, you're not, but they want to hear what your government policy is. And there was actually one that we gave a joke. He said, I've been appointed the head of the Navy, but what I can tell you is that I'm at sea. But anyway, what we're talking about is that the ministry, when there's a change of the kinds of challenges, and this is England they were talking about, and I could relate it. They said the presentation and support, your ability, which is what you talked about. You don't have to be an expert in an area. What you have to be is agile, adaptable, have a skill set, be able to learn a job and learn it quickly. And what you outlined is you apply it even to your presentations in the parliament. The structure and system. It's a structure and system approach. That's what you do. You build it. So you get the research done. And then, because I did see your thing on metal industry, and I learned something about how I didn't know how important it was, or what a huge contributor it is in terms of revenue in so-called big countries, what it is in Trinidad, the copper and the stealing of the copper and so on. And I got a better understanding. I did see your thing on the Tobago autonomy bill, and I think you made a very good point. You said we're talking all about whether they should get the 8% and all of that. I don't know if you went down that route because I didn't read everybody else's route, but I do know you said, why don't we talk about how Tobagonians can become self-sufficient, how they don't have to rely on working with the THC, how they can become entrepreneurs in their own right, how they can become, have the tourism, give them the skill set so that they are not returned wire, and so that they then become self-sufficient and not be dependent on this only. And also, of course, the argument they make is that whatever money is made in Tobago should stay in Tobago and not be repatriated to Trinidad. But anyway, you took the argument in a different direction, which I did appreciate. So these are the things they said. They need the necessary competencies, preparation and support, which, as I just said. Then the day-to-day is relentless hard work. And they're quoting from former ministers in the report. You're furiously busy. It's very, very long hours and sheer volume, because the cabinet notes come in a big black box. And you are expected, well, I know from my experience of being a minister, you have about 20 cabinet notes. And sometimes it comes to you 2 days before cabinet meeting. And you are supposed to go through not only their other person, but your own, to be able to address your cabinet colleagues on a cabinet note, which can be very, sometimes not so straightforward. Then there's
like a thesis.
Yeah, it is really. And you're supposed to and learn all this thing magically in this short space of time, right? And then they also said there's also that you have the family life suffers. They also said they call on your time, reading cabinet notes. Everyone wants a piece of the minister. They also say you're there to promote and defend government policy, to have a united front where decisions are reached. And, it's all of these requirements that are made of you as a minister. So which brings me to knowing now, not only are you an MP, if you're successful, you win the elections and you're successful, more likely you're going to be a minister. And someone like yourself should be someone who, I know there's a discipline thing, I know you want there, I know that it's ongoing, but I don't want to get into that. That is obvious for itself. And it speaks for itself. It's unfortunate, but were you then to be not only an MP and proven yourself an MP, because a lot of those skill sets don't translate to being a minister, but there's so much expectation of you as a minister to be able to magically understand. For me, for example, when I became Minister of Finance, there was so much. I mean, thank God. I mean, I have to say, I did my MBA, yes, that is true. But I have to say, having my PSs, a deputy PS who has retired, he's particularly helpful to me, and the governor of the central bank, that it really did help me. But just so much learning curve in government is so high, and the expectation. So how do you see yourself translating into doing both? Because once you become a minister, that means you're also an MP. So how you see yourself managing that? And what ministry? And if you were a minister, they say you must never say what ministry you want, because anyone who goes in have to ask for that, you're looking for trouble.
So let me actually answer the first question, right? I want to preface something you say about the MBA, right? Coming in to do the MBA with a huge private sector business experience was good. But you know what I benefited most from the MBA, and probably had a lot to do with the lecture as well, is the appreciation of the other person's perspective. That to me was the most important learning, or the most important thing that I understood after that 18 months. In that sometimes, although as owners of business, captains of industry, unless we do, I think the word they use is epistemological, when you understand somebody else's truth,
That's like religious.
See the world through the eyes of the other person.
Yes.
And if we are able to do that as captains of industries, as ministers of government, as prime ministers, see the world through your constituents, see the world through the person, the fishermen, the guys who at the end of the road selling the yam and dashing and potatoes because they can't do any better based on their circumstances. If we can see the world through their eyes, as policymakers, as policy directors, I think we're going to hit the right strings or the right rhythm in how we write policy from here, not necessarily from here, because I think that is what makes the difference. So that's the first thing. The issue about combining both roles as a minister of government and an MP, all my life, I have been working at a pace. We were trained to do 10,000 things at the same time. Karen, working in the energy sector, I went to work for Amoco on contract as a 21-year-old young engineer on January 2nd, 1996.
So you are an engineer. I did not know that.
Well, at the end of the day, you work in an environment where you are expected to do 10 things simultaneously. So we trained, and I trained my staff to do the same thing, to be multi-skilled, multifaceted. You can do 10, 12 things at the same time, managing people, managing expectation. I do not see having to be both an MP with good people, good system, good processes, being a minister of government that has the leadership quality that is required in managing your human resources below you in a way that you sell your government's idea and make it is. And that's the trick in it. If I can get my team leads to understand the concept that I want and I make it theirs, you have to make it theirs. They have to buy it wholesale and run with it, and then you commend them and reward them for accomplishing it. You will get the third and the fourth and the fifth and the sixth item done with very, very little. But there's an art in that. So I don't see it being a challenge. I mean, I would welcome the opportunity to serve again, whenever the election comes. As you say, that'll be a party decision. But I am ready in terms of a ministry. I do believe, Karen, that the future of Trinidad and Tobago in terms of our diversification, in terms of our development as a society, it has to be anchored on digital transformation, and that's my pet area. How do we bring digital transformation to the poorest of the poor in Trinidad and Tobago? How do we get them active? How do we get the non-bankers banked? That's a big thing. There's too much money sitting in pillowcases and under mattresses in the back of parlors in this country. We have to make back the system easier to get the unbanked banked. We have to make Trinidad and Tobago a place where global companies want to come operate. I know the Minister of Finance don't like to talk about digital currency, and I said that's the wave of the future. It just needs to be managed well. India has progressed well with its payment system. I think it's UPL or whatever. I can't remember the word that they call it. And what is even more important, every industry that is over the next 5 to 10 years is going to be impacted by AI. Are we talking to our unions about how we're going to make our employees now who has to go home VSEP, who has to be retrained to work in a system? I spoke to the leader of the SWWT the other day, Mr. Anisette, and in casual conversation, I said, look, the ports in Trinidad and Tobago will automate in 10, 15 years. How the Chinese are doing it, 20 men in a room moving 10,000 containers a day. Are we talking the language to the government about how do we, soften the blow in terms of how, the reduced staffing, how the technology is going to come in? If we don't start planning for those things today in terms of our legislation, our funding, how do we make private sector take part of that cushioning to deal with our people when that time comes? Because industries are going to be affected by AI in a tremendous way. So to me, if there is a ministry that I think that I will be most relevant and helpful in, it is going to be in digital transformation. And I am at a point where I think we need to go to bed on Friday night and wake up Monday morning with a new system, and you just have to learn it because we are way behind the 8 ball.
You see, the thing about it is, which of course, then we go into, let me not go into too much on that because, no, and because you see, the reality is that there is, for many, benefits in having things bureaucratic and having to go through 10 steps to reach from point A to point Z, because you didn't come to work today, you had to come back next week. You're supposed to come out thing. And after a while, you catch on. If you want anything to happen, something has to happen. And so there's going to be resistance. I know, for example, with the hospitals, I could tell you, I have written an article, and I know from, however I know it, that one of the things that I think there's resistance is computerizing the system for patients. Someone I know works in the British system, which has their difficulties. Definitely, it's not perfect, the NHS system. But one thing they do is that if patient A comes to you, and the last time you saw patient A was 10 years ago and was for something else, you just go on that computer and that whole history of that patient comes up. Who saw him, what you did, so on so. What happens in Trinidad? Everything is manual. After 3 months, they can't store it. They have to put it away and put it in some box somewhere that nobody will ever be able to find. Why do you want to do that? That is what encourages the incompetence. That is what is the potential for corruption, because you can't find the file missing, and also too encourages the ability to alter information or delete information. You computerize it, go in, it can't come back out. And those are the kinds of things that you will get pushed back on. A lot of people do not want the system computerized, because computerizing a system and artificial intelligence, there will be pushback. And so one of the things, if you were a minister, and that's the thing about being a minister, which is different from being a businessman. If a businessman could run the country, there are a lot of things they would do. But when you have a lot of other players and a lot of agenda going on, and a lot of connections, some of which you don't even know about, that's going on, and you wonder why there's delay, why things are not happening. There's a reason it's not happening.
Karen, besides the small group of people in the system who will not want digitization for nefarious reasons, I totally agree. There's a bunch of people.
A small group.
Powerful group, right? But you know why digitization is difficult in the Caribbean and more so Trinidad and Tobago because we are not a trusting society.
I wonder why.
The level of trust over the years, we don't trust our neighbors. Nobody trusts their neighbors to even watch their house when they're going away these days. And when we tell you, trust me, that when we put your data on this system, nobody knows, because we have had incidents where people in the banking system share your information and you try and get kidnapped in the past. So we've destroyed a certain level of trust. As a society, as a government who has to take a lead role, how do we work on building trust in systems, trust in people? And it comes back to the characters you're dealing with. At the end of the day, if you don't trust the people that you have voted for, listen, in the Roman days, right? There's a reason why we dip we finger in red ink. There's a reason for that.
Oh, okay.
It is in the Roman days, when I had to swear my allegiance to the emperor, I had to cut my finger and blood had to run. So when you cut that finger and you show that red ink, is that I have given my allegiance to you. All I'm saying, if you've cut that blood for me, trust me. But as I say, some of our predecessors, they have abused the trust of the electorate. They've abused the trust of the people. So while we want to move forward as a country, that trust factor is just not there. And you see evil in every single government policy.
Ruston, I have to tell you, I have been in government. I am sorry.
It's my naivety that's speaking here.
I'm going to tell you that, I'm really going to have to tell you that, because I have been in government. And one of the things that Mr. Pandy said, connect the dots. I am very good. Okay, I give you 3 examples, right? And that's just in today's papers. And one of them I'm not going to give because there's a reason I don't want to give it, right? Yeah. One example. This is in the Guardian. Yeah. With the so-called good friend, acknowledged best friend or good friend of the Prime Minister, with the moving aggregate or moving quarrying, for which the Guardian was very careful in an investigation, right? No evidence that a license had been granted. As state lands, you have to get a license. I expect you have to pay for it. There's a man called the Minister of Energy and Mining, okay, who appears to be the Prime Minister's anointed one, if he had his choice, according to the newspapers, who's in the office of the Prime Minister and appears to be the favored one, acting all the time these days for the Prime Minister. And it is the papers that saying so. You don't know right next, and they're supplying concrete, and they do not have a license, according to the newspapers. No license granted, and moving aggregate, quarrying material from there, which you have to pay for, and then selling, and then preparing concrete from that, and then selling it to the state. It's somebody who is in Tobago very small, and is a good friend of the Prime Minister. And then that same person in Trinidad, you got a judge shut down his operations. Mm-hmm. The same friend shut down his operations because he was quarrying illegally. And I read in the papers, a police officer said that when they do, what they do is remove the aggregate, wash the aggregate, and then sell it to the state. Sell it to the state without a, which means you didn't pay. You're taking, so apart from the environmental issues, what do you call that? And then you come in and sell it to me. And then 2 weeks later, on June the 5th, his son Keon gets a license from who? The Minister of Energy and Mining, to go and mine that same area that a judge in this country shut them down, right? That is one example. Another example, which I was looking at it, and I saw today and I read it. That's why when I'm telling you, Ruston, is a different kettle of fish. Different kettle of fish. Second thing I saw, the pharmaceuticals. I find pharmaceuticals now, the prices have gone up. And I have had friends of mine. It's only one place I go now to get my pharmaceuticals, because what they said in this report from the pharmaceutical head of the Pharmaceutical Society, I was seeing it. They don't change the name of the company, but all of these, including in Massey, when I went to Tamasi, they told me, no, they don't owe that. They told me that. I asked them. I said, no, they don't. It's not them. It's this, whoever it is that owns 75% of the pharmaceutical industries in this country. And the Fair Competition Act says that no one should have more than 40, especially in this little country, more than 40% in any particular, and they control 75%.
I've been writing about that for a few years. I've written about that for about 2-3 years. Every time the Fair Trade Commission responds, they says that they have looked at it and there's no evidence.
Right.
But you find the big players, and now what they're doing, they're buying up the regional distributors in Barbados and Jamaica.
And guess what? Are they doing it for you? Are you doing it for you? Are you doing it for me? That's true. Now, I'll give you the third example. I have to give you the third example because you don't understand. Sorry, Russian, but you see, when you're going inside a there, then you find out what is good and really done. Don't you see that issue with SOFA, with the whole thing about the Prime Minister? Did you see that since the 10th, that SOFA and other agreements were signed, said not a word? The Minister of Foreign Affairs and CARICOM had said not a word. They know not to say. They know not to say. Well, and that apparently he's another one that the Prime Minister favors, right? Yeah. According to the newspapers, and it is the U.S. Embassy that released it. And when released it, he nearly had a hissy fit. You know why? I mean, this is my view. This is the reason why I think he's got really concerned, because the Dragon Field, by the way, people do not know, and I read it from either the Central Bank or Central Bank got it. You don't get it on the Ministry of Energy's website because they say data, you can't get anything data. You don't understand what's going on here. They say that the initial amount of natural gas you'll get from Dragon Field is about 150 million cubic feet. Then it will go to 350. 300 will go to LNG, which is like selling cocoa instead of chocolate, and 50 will go to downstream, which is where the money's supposed to be made.
That's correct.
And we need 1.4 billion cubic feet. Why is it that Shell can make a final investment decision on Manatee, which is only in our waters, not in Venezuela waters, but you can't make about Shell October 31st coming up just now, next year, and you're talking about doing surveying, right? You have to be concerned because from my understanding, and we look for the Prime Minister to explain, but my understanding is it means that should there be some outbreak of something, that we are agreeing to allow American forces to be on our land and certain immunities will be granted to them. Now, the Prime Minister between a rock and a hard place, because how could you go against Guyana when Venezuela is claiming 2/3 of the people country and Guyana is a CARICOM country, but OFAC, which is United States, is you want to grant the license, Shell will not sign and say they will not. They ask for an extension. I thought I read 15 years. They said it wasn't 15 years, but it certainly wasn't 2 years, and it's certainly coming to an end. But you have nothing to say. So what I'm trying to tell you, I'm going to let you say the last few words. What I'm trying to tell you is, it's so disgraceful. You're talking about having confidence. It's very hard to have confidence in this country.
Trust, yes. And you're right. And the hallmark of this administration over the 9 years has been very little transparency, very little conversations with the public, very little honesty in things. I mean, Stuart, with the greatest of respect him, all these night runs to Caracas and so on, he's been less than forthcoming. The speaker has demanded that he answer a question.
Every area in the energy sector is in decline. Those are great stuff.
Right. I always wonder why the fight with Dragon, because Dragon wasn't even going to touch the deficit of gas that we need. Right now, the horizon for the green hydrogen facility, I think that too is being stymied. That could remove a lot of natural gas requirement for the Point Lisas industrial estate and leave the LNG.
They're supposed to have a solar farm since 2018.
Yep, all of those things. And again, it is because the government in 9 years, you came into government saying that the People's Partnership had wrecked the economy. They were all over the place. I will ask my colleagues, even my PNM friends here in my area, when they're convincing me, right? I say, look, at the end of the day, Tell me one thing that the PNM has done policy-wise that has changed the trajectory of this country in 9 years to a positive way. Look at infrastructure, health, education, national security. Where have we gone?
Revenue.
We've spent
Yeah,
a lot
how
of
about
money.
some revenue for the country? A foreign
Yeah.
exchange.
Well, that we moved from 12.5 billion, I think it's down to 5.6 billion as of November 2024 in the last central bank report. And the only reason why I think, well, not the only reason why I know is because when we borrow money and we get money from CAF and so on, we put it 250 million US in the foreign reserve and we take TT dollars. So we both saw the foreign reserve grow, but it didn't grow, they borrowed money.
Anymore. People not fooling. Too much economists talking. Anyway, we run out of time. I'm so sorry. But somebody called, I don't know if he wants me to call him, so I won't call his name. But he said mafia-style governance, rule and regulations don't apply to them. Yes, you're right. Right, you're right. And I'm telling you, Ruston Parry, I wish you all the very best.
Thank you very much.
We kept away from the issues that we agreed that we would not go
perhaps
to
next time.
Well, yes, and I hope that there will be a next time.
Absolutely.
I wish you all absolutely the best, and you're clearly a person committed to the country and seeing the country move forward. And you have clearly you understand what it takes to be an MP, and it's those same skill sets really are required for being a good minister. But it starts with honesty, trust, and confidence. And I'm sorry to say that this government has taken all of those and have frittered it away to the point that people question their accountability and their transparency. It's very unfortunate. I hope that you can be part of a new government. I hope to see you as part of a new government, and people can say what they want. Remember when I said the three things that MP had? The first is to your country, the second constituents, the third tier party, but over any of them is your country, La Patria. Absolutely. And La Patria comes first in my books. And if it's not in the interest of my country, I will not support it. And I see that you, Mr. Ruston Parry, Member of Parliament, but the Mayaro, and very well respected in every corner that I have spoken to. And I'm not saying that to make you feel good, because I'm a straight shooter myself. And I have never heard anything but the highest respect and highest regard. So to lose you for the country will be a great loss to our country. And I say no more on that. I say thank you. Somebody says, wow. So I will take that as a good thing. And let's hope for the next one. This will be my last show for the year for sure. Yeah. So thank you for being my guest. And
my pleasure.
I
enjoy the conversation.
Yes, and I think I'm going to get in trouble with David because it's 6:04. But David, can I let him say one or two words before I?
Yes.
So I'll close by saying this, right? I mean, it's always country first. In dealing with the last item of, your party, I respect party position. I respect party policy. But political legacy is important, especially in the 25th century, 21st century, 22nd century. It's what you do. It's what people are going to remember you by, the positions you took. And then I am always willing to understand the party's position, whole line, but I will not destroy my personal integrity to satisfy anybody at the end of the day at all.
That's true.
And it is
and
country
personal integrity is the country's integrity, because if you hold on to your personal integrity, you're holding on to your country's integrity. I thank you so much, David. Did I hold the fort up good enough in the first half an hour?
yes, you did.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening and compliments of the season. If I don't catch you before the Christmas, have a good one.
Thank you very much. You
Take
too.
care.
And
Bye-bye.
to your family and your understanding wife.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right.
This is greetings to you guys too also.
Good night. Bye-bye, David. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Good day.
That's it for today's edition of Hard Talk with Karen Nunez Tesheira.